Let's talk about the other side of the Marcus Smart trade and the team that sent Marcus Smart to the Memphis Grizzlies, the Boston Celtics. The three-team deal that sent Marcus Smart to the Grizzlies and Kristaps Porzingis to the Celtics, while the Celtics gave away a second-round pick and some expiring deals to the Wizards, happened about a month ago, and I still don't know how to feel about the trade. It's an interesting trade. It's a bold trade. It's a trade that I think has a lot of pros and I think has some questions that need to be answered and questions that probably won't be answered until playoff time. And I guess that's why I'm still kind of hung up on the trade, because the previous three-team deal that would have happened, that would have sent Malcolm Brogdon to the Clippers and Kristaps Porzingis to the Celtics with, Marcus Morris and a few other guys from the Clippers going to the Wizards. I liked that deal for the Celtics a lot more, and I probably would have given them more of a positive grade. But this iteration of the three-team deal where they gave up the heart and soul of their team to make a talent play is very bold, and I'm neutral on it, and I guess I'm in a wait-and-see approach. But I wanted to go over some of the pros that I see with this and some of the cons, and I am also going to be speaking from the perspective somewhat of a Sixers fan because, let's be honest, as Joel Embiid once said, the Celtics-Sixers rivalry is not a rivalry. They always kick our ass, and I know the regular season matchups have fared a bit better in the Sixers' favor over the last few years, but the playoffs only really matter, and in the Jason Tatum era, the Celtics are 3-0 against the Sixers in playoff series. So, with that said, let's go over some of the pros first, because I do see some definite pros, but it's going to be those cons that are going to be the hang-up for me. But let's go over the positives first. The first thing that immediately comes to my mind with Kristaps is, obviously, with his offensive shot profile, he kind of will diversify the Celtics' shot portfolio. The Celtics attempted a ton of threes last year. Their MO was threes and getting to the rim, although a lot of times it seemed like there were a lot of games where I wouldn't say they lost the plot, but there were times where maybe they didn't get into the paint deep enough and it was just basically throwing up threes without getting any feet in the paint first and then swinging the ball around. Their MO is basically getting up threes and getting to the rim, but I think Kristaps Porzingis adds a little element to the offense now where he can be a threat in the middle of the floor. You can put him at the high post. You can put him in the post, which Kristaps had a career high in scoring out of the post in terms of points per possession. But the mid-range, the facing up at the elbow, and not just, with him shooting the ball, which can extend out to the three-point line, but being an offensive hub. And that was one of the under-the-radar developments in Washington last year, is that Kristaps had a career year across the board, but also in playmaking. He was used a lot in dribble handoffs at the top of the key, at the elbow. He was even throwing some passes to backdoor cutters that, surprised the shit out of me, considering earlier on in his career he wasn't the passer that was put on display in Washington. And maybe he just needed to be used in different ways, because that's one way to get a big man involved with playmaking, is to do some dribble handoffs, get the guard going downhill, or, making nice little plays in the short roll, although Kristaps didn't do much of that. But I can definitely see why the Celtics made this move from a playmaking standpoint. You have somebody who's a shooting threat like Kristaps Porzingis, stretches out the defense, and you can get Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown going with back cuts, giving them points, giving them avenues to score in different ways. Especially for Jaylen Brown, I can definitely see the dribble handoff action benefiting Jaylen Brown the most, because you're getting Jaylen Brown to go downhill as opposed to isolation, where, as we've seen in these last two playoffs now, he can kind of get in a little bit of trouble. But not just, the playmaking, the improved playmaking from Kristaps Porzingis, and the fact that the Celtics can initiate their offense from different spots on the floor now, but Porzingis also fits the Celtics' MO of getting threes up. And I think Kristaps is immediately the best shooting big on this team with respect to Al Horford, who has always shot a high percentage from three during his time with Boston. Kristaps is just a different level of shooter, just in terms of volume, just in terms of how quick he gets the shots up. It could be a running, semi-good contest from a defender, and Kristaps will still get the threes up. And he shot a career high, it was the second best mark of his career. He shot 38% from three. But Kristaps will get those threes up in volume, and that's exactly what the Celtics want. So not only do the Celtics get, a hub of sorts to run stuff from the elbow in the middle of the floor, they also have somebody who can legitimately stretch the floor and also attack a closeout, which Porzingis did quite a bit last year. And I think a lot of the injuries now that Porzingis is kind of removed from some of the injuries he's had the last few years, he's kind of gained some pop back in his step. He's beating slow plotting bigs who are closing out off the dribble. He's hitting floaters. He shot a career high basically from everywhere on the floor last year. And the Celtics are making the bet that with an improved roster around Porzingis, with a better roster around Porzingis than he ever had in Washington, New York, or even Dallas, that Porzingis will be able to at least sustain, maybe not those career marks he hit last year, but keep it within that range to where it's very good and very effective. It wouldn't surprise me if, the Celtics, obviously, they probably combed over that Heat series with a fine-tooth comb, and they realized that, there were some points in that series where the Miami zone stifled the Celtics, and a great way to bust a zone is to send a really good player to the middle of the zone and have him wreak havoc from there. And I'm sure they envision Kristaps Porzingis flashing to the middle of that Heat zone and then either dotting somebody with a mid-range jumper or hitting Jason Tatum, Derek White, or Jaylen Brown for a backdoor cut. On the defensive side of the ball, Porzingis was kind of back to his rim-protecting self, and granted he needed to be healthy, but Washington, he was an awesome rim protector. Now, of course, the defense wasn't so great, but in terms of contesting shots, how frequent opponents attempted shots at the rim with Porzingis on the floor, and the percentage they shot at the rim with Porzingis on the floor, they were all really good. And the Celtics added another backline defender to kind of, solidify the trio of Al Horford and Robert Williams. We all know the shot blocking prowess of Robert Williams, and even getting out on the perimeter and switching, as we saw in that Heat series in the Eastern Conference Finals. When the Celtics started allowing Robert Williams to switch on to Jimmy Butler, they progressively got comfortable with that matchup throughout the series. They're like, you know what? Rob can hang a little bit. And Al Horford, obviously, we all know he is an awesome switching big, although he's getting older now. Somehow he was still defending really well in his age 37 season. But adding Porzingis gives somebody a really tall and lengthy defender at the rim. And if you start Porzingis at the 4 off of Robert Williams, or, you start Porzingis at the 5 and still start Horford, you just have an interesting combination of bigs that can do multiple forms of drop, playing at the level, which is what the Celtics have done under the Ime Udoka / Joe Mazzulla era. And it's just a lot of arms, a lot of length, a lot of tall people you have to navigate through, not only on the perimeter, but then you get to the cup and you see Kristaps Porzingis closing out on you from the weak side, or Robert Williams coming in from the backside and just swatting your shit into the 5th row. Now, I do think this limits the Celtics in terms of, their switchability and playing small lineups, and I'll get into this later. But losing your best perimeter defender, a Defensive Player of the Year award winner, and somebody who was the identity of those Celtics small ball lineups whenever the Celtics went to those lineups, that's going to impact them. So let's go over some of the questions that I think about when it comes to this trade and why I'm so fascinated / hung up by this trade. So I wrote down a list of questions or cons sounds like a bad term, but I promise you it's not. It's just things that I think about or potential drawbacks that I see, or I want to see how this plays out. But one of the first ones is, can Porzingis switch? Now, Celtics fans will be quick to correctly point out that the Celtics did play a lot of drop coverage under Ime Udoka and Joe Mazzulla. But I'm telling you, as a Sixer fan also that has seen his team repeatedly go up against the Celtics, when the Celtics go to their small ball lineup, and I'm sure a lot of other teams playing the Celtics feel this way, when the Celtics go to their small ball switching lineup, where, it's Marcus Smart, Derek White, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and Al Horford or Robert Williams, the Celtics are absolute hell to deal with. And that is one of my main reasons that I'm hung up on this trade, is that they lost Marcus Smart, and they've lost not only their only positive plus passer, they lost their best defender and somebody who was the identity and the linchpin in the Celtics' versatile roster that can do all types of different lineup combinations, and you would be fine because Marcus Smart, you don't have to worry about him and his size. He's 6'4", and he can guard everybody on the court, and that gives you so much flexibility as a team. And I wonder if Porzingis, how will he hold up on switches? Because eventually just big, tall people are going to get roasted if they're put on the perimeter over and over again in the playoffs. And we saw in that Heat series and some of the Celtics series before that, the Hawks series, where they should have ended that series earlier, playing drop coverage, that could be sort of an issue for the Celtics. I know it's great to have multiple versatile schemes, and it's great that the Celtics can have that in their back pocket, but you take away a chunk of your identity, which is your versatility and ability to play different lineup combinations for a talent play, and you gotta hope that one of your three bigs stays healthy for the majority of the year, because Al Horford is older. We all know the injury stuff that Robert Williams has dealt with the last 2 seasons now, and Kristaps Porzingis, this was his first healthy season in a while, and you're going to be asking him in the playoffs potentially to guard on the perimeter if you play 2 bigs at once. I mean, I don't know. We'll see. Kristaps has had a lot of lower extremity injuries, so I don't know if he can hold up on the perimeter like I once thought he could potentially do, when he was in his first and second year, etc. So it's Cam Porzingis switch, the Celtics losing their identity of versatility and, switchability and being able to play multiple defensive schemes with Marcus Smart. And that's not to say the Celtics can't still play multiple schemes. Their lineup and roster was just so deep last year that I was like, damn, they could really play any lineup. Then the injury history of Kristaps Porzingis and the 3 bigs I mentioned earlier. My other concern is, was the 2022-23 season a hot year for Kristaps Porzingis? If you look at his shooting numbers across the board in terms of field goal percentage, 3-pointers, efficiency posting up, which Porzingis was never good at in his entire career, and you'll see the numbers on the screen here. Last year, his points per possession out of the post was such a big jump that I don't know if it's an outlier, or I don't know if it's, okay, maybe he had improved, and Porzingis has made improvements, because I noticed a lot watching Wizards games this past year that Porzingis has better footwork, he's better at getting a lower center of gravity to take advantage of smaller players, which was kind of the hang-up with him, is can he pound the smaller defenders when they switch on him, and he seemed to do that quite a bit last year. But I also wonder how much of it was hot shooting. Now, like I mentioned earlier in the video, maybe the Celtics, the fact that they have a better roster with 2 All-NBA level players, 2 max players once Jaylen Brown signs the extension, surrounding them with Kristaps Porzingis will possibly help them sustain those numbers to be in the same ballpark as last year. But we have to admit it was a hot shooting year for Kristaps Porzingis. And then, like I mentioned, the Celtics are losing their only plus passer on the roster, which is of major concern to me, because as much as I love Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, well, not so much when they play the Sixers, Jason Tatum has a 1.5 assist-to-turnover ratio for his career, while Jaylen Brown has a career 1.1 assist-to-turnover ratio. And without Marcus Smart, on the Celtics anymore. That ball is going to be in Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown's hands a lot. And of course, like I mentioned, there's going to be some, elbow and top of the key dribble handoff stuff that they'll run with Kristaps Porzingis. But you're putting a lot of responsibility on Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown to get everybody on the Celtics involved, make sure the offense is run crisply. Where's the connector guy, the guy that will make the swing pass to the other side of the floor, which Marcus Smart did quite a bit. Derek White can do that too, but you're losing the only positive plus passer on the Celtics lineup. And it's just a bunch of average to just a little over the threshold for the assist to turnover ratio mark. And that's just a concern I have. The Celtics are still going to be good. They're still going to have a good regular season based on the turmoil going on with the Sixers, Miami Heat in limbo with the Damian Lillard stuff, and losing some of their key undrafted guys like Max Strus and Gabe Vincent, and the Bucks just brought back Brook Lopez. The Celtics are still kind of poised to be a top 1 or top 2 seed in the East, so I don't think the regular season much is going to change. It's the playoffs. Will that yield a different result? We'll find out. I can't wait to see how it turns out, and that's why they play the games.